Hi, my name is Nicki Slattery, and welcome to the Real Secrets of Money. Today, I am going to be talking about the power of savings. And this is brought to you by Unique Growth, a group, a conglomerate of financial professionals. So, we are really excited to bring you the Real Secrets of Money today, the Savings Series. All right, let's get started. Okay, so today we are going to go over a few different components of saving. So when you think of savings, it's really a multifaceted approach that you want to take. Today we're going to be talking about putting together an emergency fund, putting together a short-term savings fund, and a long-term savings fund. They all have very intentional purposes to set you up for long-term success financially. So those are the different things we're going to go into more detail today. All right, so starting out with an emergency fund. An emergency fund is really the foundation to your financial success. So the emergency fund is something that you're able to pull from when unexpected expenses happen. We typically tell people to keep about 6 months worth of expenses in this savings account. Now, dependent upon the industry you're in, what your company is going through, if there's any potential layoffs, or if you work in different industries that may be impacted by government moves or different things like that. How do you think about your savings potentially differently dependent upon the risk that you're exposed to? So there could be different things to look at a macroeconomic level too. How is the economy overall? Are we in an upturn or a downturn cycle? And are there any unexpected medical costs that might pop up? These are things that you can alleviate the pressure and tension of within your family and your household if you have an emergency fund. So, what we're really thinking about today is how to recreate that, where to re-put it, and how to rebuild it. Okay, so how much should you save? I talked about this a little bit in the previous slide. What we're looking at is our basic expenses. So this is your mortgage, your groceries, your gas, the basic necessities of living your life each month. So for most people, a family of four, you're going to be looking at typically that minimum of maybe $4,000 a month to live on. So you would take that 4,000, multiply it times six, and your savings account for your emergencies is going to look about $24,000 to support you. Now, the most powerful thing about this is when we have it and we have it working for us, we don't need to pull in credit cards or other loan instruments that are charging us interest. This gives us safety. This gives us protection to ensure that we're not taking on higher interest debt. So that's what we're looking at for the emergency fund. So, what you really want to think about is how long might it take for you to replace your income if you are laid off? If you do have something that really changes the income that you're receiving each month. So that 6 months of emergency funds gives you the essential expenses that you need so you have time to find the job that's best suited for you. So you have time to, send out the resumes and the cover letters and everything that's associated with that. This emergency fund gives you the opportunity to find the job that's best suited to you, to alleviate the tension that could exist in your family if you didn't have this emergency fund. So, this is all about enabling choices and time if, I'm just going to admit our folks coming in, this is about enabling choices and time if the unfortunate thing happens and you do lose your job. So that's the power here of having an emergency fund. Okay. So I wanted to get a little bit more specific here with our savings goals. So when money is tight and it feels like a challenge to be able to actually build that emergency fund, one of the things that we always tell our clients that's super helpful is to use the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. So that means 50% of your budget is allocated to those basic necessities. 30% is allocated to the wants, to the things that are kind of extras in life. And then 20% is allocated to that savings bucket. When people start to allocate 20% to savings, it becomes much more easy to actually get that 6-month emergency fund. So that 50-30-20 is just a really good baseline to work from to start your savings. We also recommend people have micro savings where they just have an automatic transfer. It can be $5 a week, it could be $5 a day, whatever works for you. There's tools out there like Digit, Capital, Chimes. These tools can actually help you automate your savings so you don't have to think about it. You're set, can kind of set it and forget it. When you think about savings, another mindset shift we always kind of empower our clients with is savings is really paying yourself first. There was a really popular book out, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And one of the best things that he gave as a gift of knowledge to the readers was when you pay yourself first, that savings takes care of you in the long run. So this 50-30-20 is so powerful because you're taking care of yourself in the long run. And if you set it up automatically, you don't have to think about it every month, day, whatever. So one of the other things that we have really told our clients that's been really helpful to them is roundup programs. So roundup programs are things like acorns and chime roundup. And these are simple things. If you're making a purchase and it's $5.25, it rounds it up to $6 and then puts that money in your savings. That's just another really easy thing to do to start to actually have that habit of savings and really build towards that 6 months of savings. So another thing you may want to think about is having a separate bank that you actually have your emergency fund in. So this is something separate from your checking and your savings that you're using on a regular basis. It's kind of that out of sight, out of mind savings tool. And we really recommend titling the savings as something that resonates with you. So it could be your peace of mind fund. It could be you're saving for a rainy day, whatever it is. But having that separate account is really powerful. So you know that you're taken care of should anything challenging happen, and it's automated. So these are some of the different things to think about that are tactical around setting up that emergency fund. All right, before we go ahead, we have a quick question for you here. So, how would you rate your current savings habit? The poll here is I don't save at all, I save occasionally, I automate a small amount, or I consistently save with a plan. So, if you have a moment and you can answer this question, let's check in to see what the current savings habit is. All right. So, we have our responses back here. And it looks like we have some consistency here. So consistently saving with a plan, fantastic, great job. This is really the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself. If you're saving occasionally or you're not saving at all, it's going to be really hard to get to that 6 months of expenses saved to give you the security you need to not dip into the high interest credit cards, loans, what have you. So saving consistency with that plan. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Let's hop ahead here. Okay. So when we think about the emergency fund, it's really what even counts as an emergency. So emergencies are these sudden unemployment or income losses. These are medical costs that you didn't plan for that are truly emergencies. These are disaster recovery. We've worked with people in Louisiana who are hit by hurricanes. That emergency fund enabled them not to have to dip into credit cards. That's what this is for. So, really, your emergency fund is for anything that was really difficult to plan for that you wouldn't anticipate in the annual process of looking at your expenses. That's what counts as an emergency. Okay. So this is just a decision tool for emergency fund use. These are some typical things that you can use your emergency fund for: critical home and vehicle repairs, if you have a family or medical emergency. Things you're not using your emergency for is your annual expenses, vacations, home renovations. These are things that are kind of more of your wants. They're not required. They're not part of what this fund is truly for to create that safety and that foundation. All right. So when we think about savings and how we get it done, it starts off with prioritizing. Starts off by looking at what are those basic expenses that I have? How much is it that I truly need to save? And then what percentage of income does that look like to actually have that 6 months of expenses available? We talked about automating your savings. There's a lot of tools out there that enable you to do it. And we have the round up tools as well. You can use your local bank to do the automated transfers, whatever works for you. We're tracking and we're adjusting. That age old adage of what gets tracked gets done is very, very resonant here. If we're not tracking our emergency fund, if we're not ensuring that we're sticking to it, it won't get done. And then finally, celebrating the milestones here. So when you actually do have your savings fund and you have those 6 months of expenses in the bank, it's time to celebrate that. It's time to acknowledge yourself for how far you've come and to actually celebrate the next step, which looks like building your short-term savings, building your long-term savings, and investing into what really is going to serve you overall for your financial success and your best life. So, when we go to our next component of savings here, we look at long term savings. So, long term savings is when we're thinking about retirement, education, investments. So, once we have our emergency fund done, we can continue to pay ourselves, and this is really enabling us to make our money work for us. Once again, automation's key here. Let's not think too much about it. Let's just have it automatically deducted out of our biweekly, monthly, whatever paycheck that you have, it's getting set aside. When we work with clients, our goal is to set aside at least 10% of income for long-term savings. It depends upon what you're working on here too. If you're working on education for your children and you know you have 15 years until they're going to college, your percentage might look a lot larger. So when you reflect on long-term savings, it is very dependent upon the specific timing of when you need the money and if you have that emergency fund already in place. All right, so we have another poll question here. What do you feel like your biggest barrier is to saving right now? We have, first of all, I don't earn enough. Second of all, I forget to do it. Third of all, I spend too much. And then four, I'm not even sure where to put my savings. I'll give you a moment to answer this poll question. Okay, perfect. So, our answer here is I'm not sure where to put it. So, that is a big factor in investing is we often get to almost analysis paralysis. There's so many different places that we can invest our money that it's helpful to kind of narrow down what is the time frame, what are your goals, and what is your risk tolerance. It's one of the things that we're often helping our clients with is evaluating the risk tolerance and the timing here because there are so many different investments and building the most curtailed financial plan for you and your family's needs is why people often come to financial professionals because we can help guide you in exactly where to invest that money at the different timeframes that we're looking at. So thank you for answering. All right. So, tactics to increase your savings. We've talked a little bit about this already, but I wanted to bring up a couple other things here that have been really helpful. So, we've talked about the behavioral trick of hiding the money, having a separate account, or doing the automatic transfers and not even seeing the full paycheck hit your account, having it rather go to savings. There are some other tools out there that are really helpful. You Need a Budget is an amazing app and online tool. So this allows you to be very precise in what your budget is, hold yourself accountable. You can follow the 50/30/20 model. You can follow whichever model you want and You Need a Budget, but it's just an amazing tool to hold you accountable and to actually know how much you're saving. We also have Rocket Money, which is super helpful. And Capital One, I believe, has another tool. Mint, unfortunately, they were just kind of changing their model, so they may not be available still. But check out those couple options here to track your spending. Then the final thing here is the gamification. So there is a tool on Capital that rewards you for actually hitting your saving challenges. So we have found when we make this a game, when we make it fun, when we have an app that tracks and really holds you accountable, we see a lot more savings and we see it actually be something fun for for yourself or for your family, depending upon how you're working as a team. All right, so considerations for long term savings. We've talked a little bit about this already. We really want to think about what is our employment risk? Is there any risk here of underemployment, unemployment, and how long in your industry or at your specific income level does it usually take to find a job to replace that income? So that is really imperative to think about for long-term savings. We also have family responsibilities. So this could look like caregiving for your children or for your parents. Those things can pop up, and the earlier we plan them in our long-term savings, the more that money works for us and the less we're surprised by it. Then we have debt management. This is really balancing your debt load compared to your saving and your investing. So, this is your debt to income ratio. This is also looking at your debt compared to your savings. What is that specifically? And how do you plan for the appropriate amount of debt when you're looking at good debt, like housing and things like that, or even education? So these are considerations when you're putting together a long term savings plan. Okay. So we have another little poll question for you here. So, do you have a separate emergency fund? We've talked about the importance of this, and it allows us to just truly have something on the side that we're not taking for some of those expenses that are more wants or some of those expenses that perhaps weren't planned in our savings plan. So, yes, I have a fully funded emergency fund. Yes, but it needs some work. Potentially, I don't have that 6 months. No, I want to start one, or no, I use credit in emergencies. So, if you can take a moment to answer this question, I'd appreciate it. All right. We have, yes, but it needs some work. So this is great. You have something started, it's on its way, it's working for you. Maybe you're not at the full 6 months. So if you're not at the full 6 months, then it's time to think about, do you want to increase some of those transfers that are getting automatically added to your emergency fund? Do you want to shave off some of the wants that you're purchasing right now? Or is it time to look at some of the basic living expenses and perhaps shave those down to enable the emergency fund? Once again, emergency fund is just so critical so we're not dipping into credit and taking those high interest loans and adding that to the amount of money that needs to be within our budget. All right. Okay. So, two simple ways to boost savings. We know these things, but it's holding ourselves accountable to them. So, when we're boosting savings, we're thinking about our bottom line and we're thinking about our top line. So, for our bottom line, what is non essential? What is really not serving you right now? I talk a lot to people about their subscriptions. Do we need, 5 different things that we have access to on our TV to watch? Do we need all the subscriptions on our phone that we have access to? So when you look at your expenses, it's really helpful to perhaps pull from your checking account, what have your transactions been, and really evaluating those. And if you're, part of a partnership, evaluating those as a team and what is really contributing to your happiness, to the success of your family, and what is not. Then we think about increasing our income. So you can save a lot more the more you're making. So this looks like side jobs. This looks like skill upgrades. Where could you potentially bring in more income based upon the unique skill sets you have or add on a skill set? So that's why financial planning is just so tailored to the individual because we can actually look at, what is the unique componentry of the strengths you have, of the skill sets you have. Maybe your strengths and skill sets are more towards creating more income, or maybe they're more towards being able to reduce expenses. It really doesn't matter. It's just having that inner knowledge of what works for you and your family to ensure that you have the basics covered and you have that long-term planning towards your family's success. Okay, so making the most out of savings. These are common things that we hear when we meet with clients. My savings account is earning nothing. What do I do about it? So, if you do not have a high yield savings account that makes at least around 3.5 to 4.5%, it is time to get one. We have worked with clients who have Marcus, Ally, Synchrony, all of these accounts have at least 3.5% right now. And this is easily accessible in an emergency situation. We have also recommended that you could do CD laddering. So this is locking in higher rates for your CDs. So if you have the ability to lock in money at 6 months, 1 year, etc., you can use that laddering methodology to continuously have a CD that's up and available as an emergency fund or as a fund to put for your educational expenses or whatever you're planning. So CDs, they have a variety of different timelines, but if you're laddering them and you're always starting one, you'll always have one accessible for you. We also recommend that emergency savings be put in different types of tools. So we have a Roth IRA, we have indexed universal life insurance, we have annuities. These are just different types of savings vehicles that allow you to have some liquidity and allow you to have a little bit more diversification in the type of tool available. A Roth IRA, you actually have access to that outside of the gains before you retire. So that's a really nice tool to have for emergency fund. Indexed universal life, you are able to take loans against the cash balance in your account, which is super helpful for using it for like educational expenses or any of your medium to long term cash needs. Then you have annuities. Annuities typically allow you to take out a percentage of income, typically around that 10%. And it does depend if they are retirement or if they are non-retirement accounts, but these are some other options that you have for access to your money to diversify the tools. So when we look at our savings, we're really looking at all of these different tools to allow us to hit those short, medium, and long-term goals. And then finally, I wanted to add here, you can consider Series I bonds. These are inflation protected bonds. So this is really helpful to combat when we're in high inflation and ensure that your short-term savings is definitely ahead of any sort of high inflation environment. So these are a myriad of different tools that you can use to allow you to have your savings and highly accessible tools that also have a beautiful interest rate right now and diversify your total portfolio. So those are some things to think about. All right. So I've talked a little bit about this in previous slides, but when we think about savings, the most powerful thing is our spending plan and putting together a spending plan that allows us to forward plan for our wants. We're always going to have our basic needs, and those basic needs are your food, your shelter, your healthcare, all of that good stuff. That is, if we're going back to that 50-30-20, that is the 50% of your budget that if you can create a budget that allows for 50% of needs, then you know you have the 30% for the wants. And the wants are the vacations and the clothing upgrades and the car upgrades, what have you. But when you're thinking about your expenses, if you can align them to a 50-30-20 model, then you actually have 20% that can get allocated to this long-term savings. So we just wanted to get a little bit more specific here around what a need and a want is, as we have a lot of conversations with people when we're putting together their budget and spending plans about what's necessary, what's unnecessary, and really what their true values are so we can build the best plan for them. All right. So, there's lots of different ways to plan your budget, but being honest with yourself about if you are living at your means, if you're living beneath or beyond, this is a really personal exercise to think about. Are you truly beyond your means? Are you taking on debt to enable your lifestyle? Or are you within your means? Are you not taking on debt and actually saving for your long-term goals and for your long-term values? Or are you beneath your means? And this is perhaps you are taking too much short-term or rather too much long-term focus. And that's coming at the expense of your short-term happiness. So it's all about this balancing act, and it's going to look different at every period of life and where you stand. But you know that you're living beyond your means if you are taking on credit card debt. And you might be living too far beneath your means if your savings is ballooning, but you don't necessarily have specific spots for where you're going to save that money in the future. So we just wanted to offer a opportunity here to think about where do you stand and where do you have room for improvement based upon the different place you find yourself within your means. All right. So wants are tricky because wants and needs sometimes get a little convoluted. And the wants can be so strong because we have several different things coming into factor here. We have companies who are advertising, putting billions of dollars into creating wants that we didn't even know we had before. So it's just really imperative to think about, where is this want coming from? Is this coming from my truest values and needs? Or is this coming from potentially some of that subliminal advertising I've been exposed to? Then we have peers and influencers. Funny enough, I was just talking to one of my girlfriends, and I didn't even know TikTok had a shop. And now I do. And it was interesting when I was putting this presentation together, peers and influencers. I all of a sudden had this whole new world open to me of TikTok and where I could shop and who I could be influenced by. And there's amazing products, but at the same time, all of these are wants. So as I see these, as I'm exposed to influencers and all of the social media that's available with amazing opportunities, does it align with my long-term plans? Does it align with my value system? We just need to be very aware so we're not throwing ourselves off track for the things that make the most difference in our life. And then finally, we have our personal experiences. Our financial habits are at a huge effect of what we grew up with. So, always looking at, is this habit coming from me and what I really want? Or is this just something that perhaps I've learned through conditioning or observing my family do? So, this is helping us be aware of all of the influences that are around us when it comes to our wants versus our needs. All right, we're going to jump into another poll question here. Now, for your savings, do you currently keep it in a regular bank account, a high yield savings, an investment account, or I don't have savings right now? I'll give you a moment. All right. Coming back here, we have, where do you keep most of your savings? We have a high yield savings. So we are on track here. It's really nice to see the high yield savings pop up. Um, just checking in, we want to ensure once again that that high yield savings is at least 3.5. It has accessibility, and you're continuing to invest in it and access the transfer capabilities. You can put even more into it on a regular basis. All right. So we talked about this a little bit before. Just wanting to call once again attention to the power of consumerism. And we wanted to call double attention to this because obviously we are on our phones, we are on devices a lot more than we used to be even 10 years ago. So you have children being exposed to thousands of ads a year. I was actually just at a party, and I'm talking to this lady, and her child continues to come up to her showing her things on Amazon. So he has some new toy he wants to buy, and he has this he wants to buy, and she just told him to put it on the Amazon list. But it made me realize how much we're exposed to purchasing constantly, because we have these screens in front of us, and then we have some peer pressure that encourages us to kind of not think through our purchase decision and have a lot more impulsive buying of things that aren't on purpose. So, given we have a lot of influence around us, we have a lot of advertising, we have all these different things, it's time for us to think about, how do we take back control of what we are exposed to and ensure that we're making really intentional spending choices. So, wanted to make just a second note about the impact of consumerism. So, let's bring it all back together. Today, the intention was to talk about your savings plan and to really think about the three buckets that you have available for you to create your most intentional and fulfilling family life. Now, when we break this up into three pieces, we have the emergency fund target. So that's when we look at, what is the standard of living, or what are the monthly expenses required if you were to become unemployed or if you were to have an emergency. This emergency fund replaces the income that you would have for 6 months. Then we go to our second tier here. We have the short-term savings target. So this is thinking about things like vacations, home renovations, education potentially, could be short or long-term. This is where we really want to ensure we have some flexibility with our money, but we actually have more timing to work with here. So, short-term savings is where you might want to start to think about some of those different investment tools that we just spoke about, the IRA, the IUL, and I think we talked about investment accounts too. Then lastly here, we have your long-term savings goal. So this is where we're aiming for 10% of your net income, and that's going into retirement or anything that is 10 plus years away. So one of the things we really encourage people to do as well here with long-term savings is as your income rises, as more money is in the bank, can you increase your contribution level here a little bit for each promotion, each increase? This allows you to balloon that long-term savings and really allows you to have more financial flexibility throughout your lifetime. So those are the three different things that we're looking at for a comprehensive savings plan that works for you now and also works for you in the future. All right. So some of these things we've talked about before, the importance of starting today. There's never a better time to start. Looking at where you have those opportunities to save, being really realistic about how fast you can have an emergency fund available. Is this something where you don't have anything saved yet and you really need to put more into your emergency fund, or is it just a little bit of a gap that you need to close right now? Building good spending habits. We spoke about this and the impact of consumerism and peer influences and social media. Um, Financial planning is something that is so long term, is potentially complex depending upon when you need the money. If you can put your plan in place and commit to the plan and be intentional about your spending, you set yourself up for the best financial future possible, living in intentionality and in your value system. So, recapping the overall impact you can have on your financial future. So, if you find yourself wanting more help, wanting more structure, or even wanting to think about the specific investments that you have for your emergency fund, for your midterm or short term fund, and long term, please feel free to reach out to whomever invited you to the session today, or you can actually schedule just 15 minutes of time with myself, and I can walk you through your financial wellness and where you may have opportunities to kind of bolster that. That is my Calendly link. But I really encourage you to take a step back after taking this information in today and think about what are just a couple things you can do to honor your savings plan and to be ready for the future. And if that looks like getting help from a financial professional, we're here to help you. And we're here to continue to provide education to move you forward. So I did want to end on a quick disclaimer here as well. Real Secrets of Money is a financial literacy program. Nothing that we are providing is specific investment advice. We're really just intending to help you and educate you in all the different things you have available to increase your financial wellness. So thank you on behalf of Unique Growth for joining the Real Secrets of Money today, specifically on savings. We are here to support you and help you on your financial journey. And please reach out to us if you need any more one-on-one coaching support. Thank you.